Alright, hello everyone. My name is Disc, and in this video we have a 23 Necrotic Wake that went really smoothly. For once I have kind of a group on my side. We know our tank, we know our monk, and we know our warlock. And we're all in Discord together, coordinating, which in higher keys it really does give you an advantage. But we're still on Fortified, Spiteful, and Necrotic. I do not like this week, and I'm really ready for the cycle to flip over. But I think I was able to make it through this key without any deaths. I can't say I had a perfect key without any mistakes. There were a couple deaths that I think I could have prevented. But we're about to get going here. Let's see what we do. And Goon is my PI target for sure. Monk or Hunter is a good backup if I can't PI Boon. If I can't PI Goon. So I lead with some atonements. It's always important to start your atonement ramp with a Shadow Mend for how it backloads on the cast. You get 2 atonements in the same global. And I give my focus to the Vanguard. He has the most health here, so I get atonements out. Ooh, good thing I didn't cast Schism. So Schism and Boon. And we have a large pack still. Well, it dwindled while I was incapacitated. But throw in a Blast Radiance Blast just to get some coverage on the group before the eruption. And with all these Spitefuls, I just retreat a little bit. Most nameplate add-ons have a feature to highlight aggro. I think that's the best way to monitor if a shade is on you, to have just a little extra graphic for aggro. And this next pull is probably the hardest of the dungeon, so we're going to use everything, I think. I open with as many dots as I can. Barrier for some cushion. Spot heal, getting fresh atonements out. Getting more dots out. And I'm atoning the group before I Schism and Boon The way I see this fight is it's going to be hard no matter how you spin it. But if we have die and get that 10 seconds of healing, it'll make things a lot easier. So I focus him with my Schism and my blasts. And in this 10-second window, I use that to refresh dots. You can kind of take a backseat to healing in those 10 seconds, and it's better spent if you can just refresh your dots. Shining Force is a great spell this week. And we have several Kyrian in the group. This shouldn't be a problem. I did have a couple, I guess, misplays you could call them here, but thankfully it didn't cost the key, it didn't cost the fight, I didn't even die, but we really have to reserve Wall and we have to reserve Pain Sup for the most opportune times. Basically, if you're targeted with the boss mechanic too many times in a row, you need those defensives. But we're getting down. I'm doing the same with my Boon. Arguably, I should have saved Schism, saved Boon, but that's fine. And there's our PIQ on Goon. I need to stand a little bit more in melee here. Ouch. So there was my first wall. I don't think that placement was ideal. And it clipped both of us. And then also that Pain Sup wasn't ideal because I threw it out right as we got the healing buff. So arguably it wasn't needed. And we have Boon again. You always want to Boon here when there's ads. We still have some... We just still had ads from the field, but you want to save it for when you also have the boss ads, the little worms. And that's where you saw one area where running out of defensives put me in a really precarious place. I didn't have wall, I didn't have pains up. I could have barriered or raptured, but I didn't reach for that. I did get a blessing of sacrifice from our tank, but I actually think it was late, so thankfully I didn't die. Yeah, for that one I barriered. I had to. But now I have wall up again, so we should be comfortable. And I go ahead and get Shadow Fiend rolling. You definitely want to use him at least once on this fight, followed by a Schism. Whenever the worms are up, a Mind Seer is not a bad spell to use. But you can see I'm kind of getting pigeonholed over here. I do request a gate, but I think there's an LOS issue, so I'm kind of stuck over here, which isn't too much of a problem unless that happens. The monk clipped me with her mechanic there, and then I was kind of cornered with a worm. Thankfully it didn't kill me. I think I had an off heal, or I used a pot or something, but fear the worm away, pre-feather, run across the goo to safety. And the boss is just about dead here. We have Boon available, which is all we need. I always like to throw a Mind Soothe on this guy, the Gatekeeper. I've seen it pull way too many times, which is mind-blowing to me, so I just soothe it to try and help prevent that. But we have a little bit more trash here, if I remember correctly. We're going to take like a 7-pack here, and although the threat is low, you never really want to hold Boon if it's a large group, because you get so much return. And getting a couple dots out. I think I'm just waiting for Schism. Yeah, I try to only boon when I have Schism. Sometimes I boon without Schism, just to get it rolling, but in this case I just had to wait a couple seconds. And doing my best to make sure all my Novas hit. I do run the Penitent 1 Legendary, so I try to cast Radiance more. I do find in my rotation I don't cast it that much. I actually favor the longer atonements from a shield or a Shadow Mend, but Radiance is undoubtedly really powerful, and I'm just trying to work it in a little bit more. And along with the Penitent 1 Legendary, one thing I've noticed is it kind of changes my rotation a little bit. So usually I would Radiance and spam Penance on the back end. But now that Penance could possibly have a proc, I don't want to unload it offensively because it might be a better play if I use it defensively. So I usually Radiance followed by a Mind Blast or Solace, just to give me a second to see if I have a proc. And our Goon is not ready, but our Monk is. So PI on the Monk, straight into a Schism and Boon. I try and get 2 to 3 to 4 dots out, but then go straight into Schism Boon. And you'll see right there I had a Penance proc, which I used on myself for the win. My opinion when it comes to procs is you don't want to unload them immediately just because you have them. The better way to use a proc like that is to bank it and hold it. I think it's a 15 or 20 second buff. So if you kind of reserve that penance even just for a second, you might get a better play out of it, save someone's life. So yeah, with the Penitent 1, I definitely say after your Radiance cast, Solace or Mind Blast. Don't dump straight into Penance. You want to give yourself a global to see if there was a proc or not. These guys are a Mind Soothe skip. I'm trying to get ahead of the group here a little bit. I use my macro for Fade Mount. And these next two guys are Fortified. They're not a threat, but we do need to pop cooldowns. Give a quick feather to our tank. Love handing those out. And I'm 10 seconds behind our Infernal queue, but Infernal is 30 seconds to my 20, so that's fine. So I spam PI right when I get it, which is just in time for those shields, and we one-phase those guys, which is what we needed. And you could boon this pull, but I opt to hold boon for the larger pull next. I might have booned the 2-pack, but we had other cooldowns running, it wasn't necessary. All I do here is dot everyone, Schism the Necromancer, and Seer. I wouldn't say follow my lead with that play because I'm definitely trolling. I'm just trying to pad my DPS meters. Single target cast would be better on the Necromancer, like Solace and Mind Blast and Penance. But I'm doing Mindseer. So we take the orbs early just to polish off this group. And the monk tried to do a triple Salcal right onto me. Thankfully we dodged each other. And it's also really important, I'd use a weak aura or get some method to track the orbs collected from the Goliath. It happens so often that people miss orbs, and that's just not min-maxing this dungeon. They do so much, makes a really big difference if all 5 are collected. So we have a really large group. All I do really is just favor Nova there. And coming right out of boon, I toss my paints up. It's always nice to try and stagger cooldowns, may it be your own cooldowns, or you can also coordinate stagger cooldowns with your tank if you want to be even better. In Grid 2, there is a built-in feature. If you notice on the outside of my frames on the right, like next to the Paladin right now, there's one little icon. That icon space is what shows the presence of a defensive, and it's loaded, like the coding is loaded with every defensive in the game. So basically, if someone has an icon on the right side of their name, it means they're somewhat safe for the moment. It can help you prioritize healing someone else, or it can help you stagger cooldowns. And I noticed we were about to run out of our woe, so I just had to sneak right the fuck through. And thankfully, I made it. There's a little bit of weird residual damage there, but it doesn't hold you in combat, or doesn't pull you in combat rather. So thankfully, quick res for the win. But one thing to note about that woe is whenever we're doing a woe pull, you have to time the death of woe at the end of combat. And for us there, it died just a little too early and almost put us in a predicament. I will target macro give him a dot and some love. There is our PIQ, right on time for the ads. I have atonements in the whole group, and I go into a Schism boon. And we were getting so I did not bother refreshing atonements. That was 10 seconds fully of boon. And I got a little carried away there and got breathed on, but that's okay. Perfect time for wall, and my rotation does not use barrier in this fight, so I dumped it just for myself. And the way I go into the second ad phase is I lead with a Radiance for the Mastery, followed by a Rapture, and then as soon as the ads come out, I will Shadow Fiend and Schism. every ad phase but the first, it's important to get a shackle out. On the first ad phase, we're going to kill everything because we're all in cooldown windows. But after that, it gets a little more dicey. So shackle is a really good spell here because these guys are undead. And you want to shackle generally a mage. And you want to shackle them quickly after they spawn because they will spawn outside of the group and then migrate in. So shackle them on the outside. And getting a couple atonements out here. We have 10% more to go of boss, so I schism and boon. I think it's a fine play because we're going to get a lot of value out of it. Toss in a blast, Radiance Blast, just wanted some coverage there. And our math is done. So one thing we've noticed, and if you're a Blizz developer, please help us. There is a malfunction in this necropolis up here where our Destruction Warlock is much less useful because of his minion spawns and his infernals. They don't quite work up here, he says. So I feel like that's a really big problem with probably an easy solution, and it's affecting our gameplay and it's affecting our experience, so please fix it. So I got off sync with Goon, but I did PI our monk, and I called for the monk to use their Zwin. Since we have I never see a point in holding PI or any 2-minute cooldown if you're about to go into But she held Zwin because she was thinking ahead to this big pack. But I think she could have popped there and it would have been fine. It's neither here nor there. But on this pack, we're going to have all 3 of our DPS pop cooldowns, and we have an orb, so arguably kind of overkill, and we could have sped up this fight a little bit, but it's fine. I'm open with a barrier just for cushion on the whole group. Paints up as well. And I'm trying to get just a couple of dots out and a couple of atonements, and I go into a boon. I blast Radiance Blast early in the boon for coverage, and it was a good thing because that AoE damage went out. And if we weren't in boon, not sure what we would have done there. And we lost a player. Things are getting a little bit hairy, so I Shadow Fiend. It looks like I dropped my Schism for the Shadow Fiend, but that's okay. I went to a more defensive play, dropping Rapture. That was just about all I had left. And that was also a really hard pull, but we made it through. Shining Force, get that ghost away. I'm so ready for those ghosts to be gone, and ready for this week to cycle over. So I do have PI again, and you'll notice, I guess because I used it on that one pull, I have fallen off of sync with everyone else. So we're just going to have a little bit of uptime on it, just waiting for someone to get a cooldown. 3-pack isn't the best for boon, but I'm not going to hold it. And that was a really aggressive boon. No atonements were out, no atonements were refreshed. And one of your most powerful plays is using a 15-second atonement from just a regular heal. The only thing I say about Radiance is that that short atonement just isn't quite enough for boon, basically. So I prefer longer atonements. And for a fight like this, I always lead with Fade. It's a really accessible keybind for me. And I'm getting my dots out. I get my PI out on the Goon. And I don't really have any cooldowns here, so I'm just manually getting through it, keeping an eye on where the shades are. One of your best defensives is a good offense with discipline, and what I'm saying is keeping all of your dots rolling. That returns to quite a bit of healing. It's a pretty fat haunt, if you will. So we gotta be careful with because he gets a debuff, our tank gets a debuff, and he's already getting a debuff from the stitch work. So a nice defensive penance proc fully into the tank, just to carry over the last couple seconds into the herb buff. So the main reason I like the Penitent one is for that defensive heal. I feel like one weakness of Discipline is we don't have any instant heals or any large instant heals. And that's something that all other classes have. And although Penance isn't necessarily instant, it's a channel, it sure can heal someone up in the heat of a moment. Alright, we got these two. And we're only going to have PI mid-fight. I don't think I use it here, but I am going to use another one of my cooldowns. So it's always good to track your spectrometer. It's a Mechanicos trait. I have it built into my nameplates for easy tracking. But I am going to Shadow Fiend and Schism. It's a long cooldown. This is a long fight. There's no reason to hold it. We don't need the healing, but we take it as a DPS button. Man, I was targeted with a couple too many of those. Wall for the win, though. And so is Goon. Dang, Shadowman's everywhere. I practice my rotation here, keeping dots refreshed. Penance is our friend in a two cleave fight. You can always spread your penance from either the one that's dying or the one that has a higher duration. And quick action there to put the cleaver on the mob. Enemy down. And going into this fight, I am off sync with Goon again, but it looks like our monk and our hunter have spells. Open with my dots. I choose the hunter for this one. I think maybe he wanted some fun too. So, melee priests. We are in very vulnerable positions being in melee, but thankfully Boon gives us a movement speed increase, so it kind of helps us be a little bit more defensive and gird our loins. But I Boon and always try and stay on the back side of that mob. Schism Boon. Out of Boon, I just refresh my dots once and just sear a lot. Alright, Gore Grind almost done. So one really important thing that I think can improve your play and make you a lot better is using bigwigs or something like it, but then going into every dungeon and every boss fight and eliminating notices that don't impact you. So like for that one, the gut slice was the only one that impacts me, so I have everything else turned off. And on this fight, I open with all my dots and a Boon. The only thing you can really do here to help someone is maybe grip them out of the spit right after it lands. And other than that, yeah, so that was a death that I would say is arguably on me. These guys are fortified. It is a 23. I needed to have everyone's health topped up a little bit better. I'm not sure if they had wall or if they had anything on their side, but if I had everyone's health a little bit higher, it might have prevented deaths. Yeah, and things got away from us a little bit there. The hunter was half health and targeted with the mechanic, and it got him also. So I'll take the blame on both those. My bad. I thought I had a good example of grip here, but it must have been another key I did. But I always want to monitor where that spew disease is going And you can grip someone to help like min-max their health loss. And here we have the boss. If I remember correctly, it is not a problem. Target macro for give him a dot, give him all my single target spells. Always try and give him a Shadow Word Death too, just to polish him off. So I want both dots out here, I want them refreshed. I want full atonements in the group going into the boss, because I'm going to double cooldown. PI our Warlock, cast Shadow Fiend, Schism, and Boon. And this was one that timed where the synergy of allowed me to blast every global. It's a really fun play that I don't do too often on purpose. The jury's still out yet if I think it's better to do that or not. I think you might get better cooldown if it's played differently. I guess it all depends. But the way that one worked is I got blast for every global with a schism, so really powerful, really fun. And here we are at the last boss with 10.5 minutes to go. All of our cooldowns are unavailable, so the best thing I can do here is help get this down. Single target spells, refresh dots. And I do have a hammer for this fight, so you want to use that when the shield goes up on the boss. We have our tank managing the weapons. He's calling for them when he wants in Discord. So there was that felt really good. We're all full health. Cooldowns are almost available. And I did not use a cooldown for this round. We didn't really need it yet. And PI on Goon. You always want to wait for after the person is selected. Like you wouldn't want to PI Goon, for example, and then he is selected to leave a second later. It'd be bad timing. So for this round, I just really needed to get Boon rolling. It increases my movement speed, which is great. Covered the healing. And our Paladin is really quick on those Blessings of Freedom. Love to see it. And for this round, we didn't quite get the shield down, which is going to return a lot of damage. I have to move, so I raptured. A better play might be to schism right before the dance, but schisming after the dance is fine too. And I think on this shield is when my weapon is called. Yep, so throw my weapon, and here's our dance. And for this round, I fiend just for a little coverage, and out of the dance, I schism for my fiend. He's so good with those freedoms. And a real power play if it's a class that doesn't have much mobility. If they're brought up with that ground debuff and they're going to lay it like in a corner, it's really nice if you can grip them out of that, or even just give them a feather. So the timing of that wasn't perfect, but thankfully I had a single dispel left over for the tank who was frozen. And PI's up, Boon is up, Voss is just about dead. I don't think I realized I had Boon. So there's the PI. There's the Boon. And it was a little bit of overkill, but actually I got full value. Boom. And there it was. So Necrotic Week 23, not the hardest key around, but that was a pretty good example of playing well. One thing to note is on Fortified and the Necropolis below us, when those spew spit goes out, you really have to make sure your allies are topped, or at least roll a defensive. I think it's partly on them to keep their health up with maybe wall or something, but there is an aura that goes out that constantly takes their health down. But other than that, I think this was a pretty good run, and yeah, until next time guys, Disc out.